I call the Minister for International Development and the Pacific.
Deputy Speaker, well, it wasn't the audacity of hope, was it, Deputy Speaker?
It was a bit unconvincing.
If you were looking for the audacity of hope, you would have been sorely disappointed. I mean, that's what we get from the opposition in a year where we've had the most difficult challenge faced by the Australian community in 100 years. No audacity, no hope, but a collection of negative material at the end of a year. In fact, this year we've seen, I believe, the best and the finest of Australians, our community, our people, our businesses, our governments, our states, our territories, our Commonwealth and our defence forces, our health personnel. We've seen the best of people. We have together come through in a more cohesive state than any other society on the planet. And whatever your political ideology, and we have different ones, all of us know that in crisis, all of us accept that in emergency, the government has a pivotal role to play. And there's no doubt this is a crisis and an emergency. And there's no doubt, regardless of our difference in approach, in our fundamental differences in political belief that do come in this chamber, that all of us come together at this time. So for the Leader of the Opposition to stand here on a matter of public importance on the last day of the year, after the year we've had, and simply pick a collection of things that he finds very negative, I think is a failing of leadership. I think people over there think it's a failing of leadership. And I think they understand it is a failure of leadership when you think about what was needed by Australian leadership this year. And the standing up of the National Cabinet at the beginning of this year is a great example. Political differences, differences in approach, differences in nuance, and yet they've come through it together. Tomorrow, when the National Cabinet meets here in Canberra, again, after having successfully steered this country through, you'll see an example of state leaders, you'll see an example of a federal leader that have been prepared to put aside their differences to work together in the broader interests of the Australian community. And I don't know where the Leader of the Opposition spends his time, but you can walk down any street of this country, you can go into any pub of this country, you can go into any club of this country, you can go into any hospital of this country, and you'll find people who will tell you in every corridor, on every street, in every bar, we are really grateful to our governments collectively for the way this country has gotten through a very difficult year. That's right. That's what you hear. And we are grateful to them, Deputy Speaker. The question time today that the government put forward was about our gratitude to what Australians have sacrificed, what they have done for this country to get us through in the most cohesive state of any country in the world. We are the best region in the world because of what we've done together with partners. And it does require people to put aside their differences. It does require oppositions to not be relentlessly negative at this time. We understand in opposition you've got to be negative. People do. But in a crisis it might have been better not to be. And at the end of a year where we've had the most difficult year, it might be better to come to the table and have some audacity, have a little bit of hope for people. And that's the message the government has going into this break. There is reason for great hope of recovery, a comeback in 2021 where Australia will be well placed in the world to take advantage of what we have achieved and the sacrifices that we have made. Because of the sacrifices of Australians, we find ourselves in the best position to take advantage of the vaccinations that are coming on. The government has made investments in those vaccinations, a key deliverable for the Australian people next year. We've got the right investments in the right vaccinations, making sure that we have access. And we have not just looked after our own population, we have said to our region, real regional leadership, of the kind Australians expect us to say, we will vaccinate our partners, our neighbours in the Pacific and Southeast Asia. We will help others as well as help ourselves. And that's real leadership. And we've also prepared Australians by putting out more money than it's ever been spent before. The Labor Party says it isn't enough, but it's a record for any government ever to put forward to sustain people in their jobs and keep businesses with their doors open this year. And whatever your view about when it should come off and when it should taper off, we all agree on the fundamentals. The Labor Party agrees, the Leader of the Opposition agrees. It should be tapered off when it can be. We must get people off it, back into work, with jobs being retained but also created again. And that's what we're seeing now at the end of the job seeker period. We are seeing businesses graduating off it again, saying our revenues are up. We can come off. And that is where one difference comes back into play about ideology. Of course we should put it aside in a year like this. Of course we should work together and with the power of government to help people's lives. But when we look back and we say, well, what is the purpose of welfare? Where it's to get people through a tough period, not to keep them permanently on it. It's to get them back on their own feet. It's to make them stand up again. It's to give them their own dignity in their own job. It's to get them back into their own business. It's to give them hope again. It's to get them moving forward, not to keep them permanently chained to it. And everyone who believes in that understands what that is about. And given that we have the toughest year ever, we must do everything possible to keep people getting back to work. And that's why you've seen the biggest comeback for this year that you've seen in our economy's history. That is fantastic. Thank you to the Australians that are doing it. Thank you to every small and medium family business that has toughed it out and still has very tough scars from this year, who are still employing, keeping their workforce on, keeping their hours on, and we as a government are trying to do as much as possible to make sure you can keep all your employees all through 2021. You can add more shifts. And of course the Labor Party is running the mother of all scare campaigns on it, because we are saying let's reasonably and properly release some of the shackles of the industrial relations system so that people can keep people in jobs and have people in the door. And of course they've run the biggest scare campaign today, negativity, relentless negativity again. Instead of saying we are in the toughest economic conditions in 100 years, and in 2021 we want to make sure that employers and employees can continue to do what they do best, which is work together on keeping businesses open. And that's the only way forward, the only way we will recover, the only way we will come back. But if you look at the achievements, not just in health that we've made, and we thank everybody who's worked in health, for our healthcare workers, our hospital workers, in aged care, there's significant work they've done there that's put us in such good stead. We also turn to the other achievements that have been done this year. And you think how many things have been done while we've had the pandemic on. It's quite a list, Deputy Speaker. And instead of criticising the government on minor and technical issues and trying to find some point of difference or wedge, it is time to continue to work together while we get through what is going to be a very difficult 2021. Deputy Speaker, I've spoken about vaccinations and I've spoken about the need to continue to get Australians home. The opposition has said the government hasn't done a good enough job. Since the beginning of the pandemic, I remind the House, 432,000 people have returned home since the beginning of the pandemic. That's the facts. 432,000 Australians. We welcome them home. And then, of course, everyone that needs to come home will come home, and we'll keep working at it. And I want to thank again DFAT and the work they've done, and our consular officials around the world, in what is the most difficult year, with sovereign countries shutting their borders, their transnational borders, their internal borders. We've been able to get people out of very difficult situations, and not enough credit's been paid to our officials. No, I do want to thank our officials. I do want to thank everyone. We have spent all day today thanking every Australian we can, in every agency, in every public service sector, in every part of our country who's done something to contribute. They've been magnificent. That's the difference. That's the difference between government and opposition. It's the difference between leadership and a failure of leadership. And we go into the Christmas break. We come to the end of the year. In every pub, in every street, every bar, in every part of the country, Australians have a great pride in all of their governments and their country, and they should. They should, because we've come together. They should, because we've done something which no other part of the world has done. They should be proud because we've got a plan going forward to not only retain the benefits and the sacrifices of the health sacrifices we've made and put us in the best stead in the world, but to take advantage of the economic opportunities with our advanced industrial manufacturing plans, our defence, sovereign capability plans, and all of the forward-thinking things that will put us in good stead to have sovereign capability here, to create those jobs, to back Australians' innovation, to back those small and medium businesses. That's what people want from their governments, state and federal. They want some hope. They want some audacity of hope. They will not get it from the Leader of the Opposition.